Look, I'm just going to be straight with you. This isn't one of the moves that's going to break the internet. Nobody's going to wake up tomorrow with their jaw on the floor talking about what the Blue Jays just did. But if you've been watching this team long enough, if you actually understand how baseball seasons work, you know that sometimes the quietest moves end up mattering the most when October rolls around. Toronto just brought back Max Scherzer on a one-year incentive-heavy deal. And before you click off thinking this is just another throwaway veteran signing, give me a few minutes, because I genuinely think this is one of the more underrated decisions this front office has made in a while, and I want to break down exactly why. Let's start with something that never changes no matter what era of baseball you're watching. Pitching depth is everything. Not just your ace, not just your 2 or 3 starter, but the depth behind them. The guys who can step in when things go sideways. Because over 162 games, things always go sideways. That's not pessimism. That's just the reality of a baseball season. Arms get tired. Guys hit walls. Someone goes on the IL in the middle of a crucial stretch, and suddenly your entire rotation plan looks completely different than it did on opening day. The Blue Jays understand this, and that's exactly the lens through which you have to view this Scherzer signing. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Max Scherzer isn't the guy he was 5 years ago. He's not the pitcher who was absolutely dominant in Washington, who was making hitters look silly in Detroit, who was one of the most feared arms in all of baseball for over a decade. And you're right, that version of Scherzer isn't walking through that clubhouse door. Nobody's expecting him to post a 2-something ERA and eat up innings the way he did during his Cy Young years. But here's what I think people get wrong when they dismiss a signing like this. They judge the player by who he used to be instead of asking what he can actually provide right now in this specific situation for this specific team. And when you ask that question honestly, the answer starts to make a lot more sense. Scherzer still competes. That part hasn't changed. The guy has always been wired differently than most pitchers. The preparation he puts in between starts, the way he studies opposing lineups, the adjustments he makes in real time during games, none of that goes away just because his fastball doesn't hit the same numbers it used to. He knows how to pitch. There's a massive difference between a guy who throws hard and a guy who actually knows how to pitch, and Scherzer falls firmly in that second category. He gave Toronto some genuinely solid outings in the middle of last season. That's not nothing. That's actually meaningful data that this front office looked at and said, okay, there's still something here worth betting on. And the financial structure of the deal makes it a low-risk bet. If he shows up and delivers, he can earn up to $10 million. If things don't work out, the Blue Jays aren't sitting there with a massive financial anchor dragging them down. That flexibility matters. That's smart roster construction. Now let me talk about something that I don't think gets enough attention when these veteran signings happen. Think about Trey Yesavage for a second. He's one of the pieces the organization is genuinely excited about. He's part of what this team is building toward. And because of that, you have to be careful about how you use him, especially early in the season. Overloading a developing arm in April and May because you don't have other options is how you create problems in August. It's how you watch a promising young pitcher hit a wall right when your team needs him most. Scherzer changes that equation. He gives this coaching staff flexibility. Instead of pushing Yesavage into situations he might not be ready for, they can manage his workload properly, let him develop at the right pace, and still have a reliable veteran option to lean on when they need it. That's not a small thing. That's actually one of the smartest parts of this entire deal when you think about the bigger picture of what Toronto is trying to build. And then there's José Berríos. When Berríos is locked in, he looks like a genuine top of the rotation starter. He really does. But consistency has been the conversation around him for a while now. There are stretches where he looks unhittable, and then there are stretches where you're sitting there wondering what happened. That inconsistency is exactly why having someone like Scherzer behind him matters. You're not just adding depth for depth's sake. You're adding a layer of insurance that allows this rotation to survive the inevitable rough patches that every pitching staff goes through. The middle of the baseball season is where roster construction either holds up or falls apart. May, June, July, that brutal stretch where the schedule keeps coming at you, the bullpen starts feeling it, the starters are racking up innings, and the margins start to get really thin. If you've built your depth properly, you get through it. If you haven't, that's when you start to see teams fall out of contention, not because of a catastrophic moment, but because of a slow accumulation of wear and tear that they just couldn't handle. Having Scherzer available to take the ball and give you 5 or 6 solid innings during that grind doesn't just help the starting rotation, it protects the bullpen too. Every game where a starter goes deep into the game is a game where your relievers get some rest. Over the course of a full season, that adds up in ways that are genuinely significant, even if they don't show up on any individual box score. There's also something I want to say about what this signing means beyond the on-field stuff, because I think it actually does matter. Younger pitchers learn by being around guys like Max Scherzer. You can talk about development all you want, but there's no substitute for watching how a future Hall of Famer prepares for a start. The film study, the game planning, the way he approaches an at-bat when he's in a tough spot, those are lessons that don't come from a minor league coaching staff. They come from proximity to greatness, even aging greatness. That stuff doesn't go in the box score. You're not going to see a stat line that says Scherzer had a positive influence on a young pitcher's approach to pitching. But ask anyone who's been around a winning clubhouse, and they'll tell you it's real. Veterans with that kind of credibility and that kind of track record shape the culture of a pitching staff whether they're trying to or not. Other pitchers watch how they work. They pick things up. They raise their standard. And look, I want to be honest with you the way I always try to be on this channel. None of this works if Scherzer can't stay healthy. That's the piece of the puzzle that nobody can control and everybody has to acknowledge. At this stage of his career, health is part of the equation in a way it wasn't 10 years ago. The Blue Jays know that. That's why the contract is structured the way it is. They're not backing up the truck and handing him a guaranteed massive payday. They're saying, show us you can contribute, and we'll take care of you accordingly. That's the right approach given the circumstances. So where does this all land? Toronto didn't make a move that's going to dominate the baseball conversation for the next 2 weeks. They didn't land the big fish. They didn't make the kind of splashy signing that goes viral and gets people fired up in the comments. What they did was something quieter and, honestly, something smarter. They looked at their roster, identified a real vulnerability, and addressed it in a calculated way that keeps their financial flexibility intact, while giving the team a legitimate upgrade in depth. That's how good organizations operate. Not every move needs to be a headline. Not every addition needs to change the entire perception of a franchise. Sometimes the most important things a front office does are the practical ones, the ones that solve a real problem without creating new ones. The Blue Jays rotation has genuine talent at the top. The organization has real pieces they're excited about for the future. And now they have a veteran who knows how to pitch, who competes on every single outing, and who can help bridge the gap between what this team is now and what they're trying to become. Max Scherzer coming back to Toronto isn't the biggest story in baseball right now. But don't be surprised if it ends up being one of the more important ones when this season plays out.